Hello and welcome back to yet another video. So in today's video it's going to have a bit of a different pace, so we'll be ranking study techniques by tier. But just as a disclaimer, these are my personal opinions when it comes to study techniques. People have their different opinions, so what I say is not the right or wrong. Different things work for different people. But let's jump right in. Okay, so let's get started. So to start off, we're starting with question banks. In my opinion, question banks are probably good. They're a great resource to just almost like past papers, finding things that people have done in the past and just questioning yourself on them. Things like Quizlet, almost like Quizlet, as those are flashcards, but they're very, very useful. But the only reason I put them as good, as in terms of long-term memory, it doesn't play a huge part there. It doesn't really help you to memorize things. So moving on to rote learning, I'm gonna put this as a meh because of the reason that you usually do this. It's usually for not actually application. It's usually just for the sake of doing it, which is why I don't really like it. And there's not really any why you'd actually want to memorize it, why you want to learn it. So that's the only reason I put it as a meh. So in terms of active recall in my opinion is a king. And that's because with active recall, it helps to store things in your long-term memory by actively recalling things. So the great resource we'll talk about later is Anki. So it times you and it shows you questions on different times that are prime for your brain to remember things. So by you trying to remember it, it's forming those new neurons, new neural pathways that really help in strengthening your ability to remember things over a long period of time. So moving on to a Pomodoro timer, in my opinion, that's great because for Pomodoros, the only problem I have with them is that sometimes on your breaks, you often get distracted and don't actually come back straight away. But other than that, it's pretty good, pretty decent, and I would recommend it to anyone looking for any study methods. Personally, when I started studying extensively, probably one of the biggest techniques I was using just to get the ball rolling, to get a bit of momentum, because as I talked about one of my previous videos, if you want to start studying, start by doing it for 5 minutes. Only tell yourself for 5 minutes. It gets the momentum going, almost like a ball rolling down a hill. So moving on to spaced repetition. So I also rate this as a great because spaced repetition is used in Anki. It's almost like mind mapping, but in terms of storing things in your long-term memory, that's where active recall always comes in clutch. Past papers, I'm also going to put it as, actually let's put it as a great because it depends what you're studying for. If you're studying for an exam, definitely past papers are the way to go. But if you're just doing just studying in general for not really any purpose, they don't really help in storing things. I usually use past papers as a way to just know how they ask the questions. For example, in chemistry, they may waffle a bit for the first couple sentences, and then the sentence after that is where they actually put in some application that you've used before. So that's very, very useful in my opinion. So next is teaching others. This is very, very useful. I'll probably even put it as a great because when you teach others, one great way to think about it is if you can explain something to a 5-year-old, then that means that you've mastered it. So you always want to just try to teach things to your mom or dad, things like that, or your roommate, whoever you have near you. Because they can really help in just strengthening your confidence even and your knowledge on the subject. So reading notes, I'm gonna put this as good because reading notes, you can do passive reading, which doesn't really store in your long-term memory, which is the aim. So that's why I put it there. Same with probably making notes. I'll put that as a good as well because if you're in class, right, sure, make notes. But it's really what you're doing with those that really, really counts. So in terms of rewatching lectures, sure, great. So if you want to just do some quick revision before the exam, rewatching some of the lectures is perfectly fine. Not really good for long-term memory, but just to rewarm any neural pathways or remember anything, just warm up before the exam. Sure, rewatch some lectures. So Anki always comes in clutch, so I'm gonna put it as king because it makes great use of active recall, so spatial repetition, which really helps. They use a software that allows you to, that gives you questions that you've created on a time-to-time basis, the time for your brain to remember things. And once your brain remembers things, it allows you to store it into your long-term memory. It's kind of like people who try to lucid dream. What they do is they write a dream journal. So they have to force their brain to remember the dreams in order to write them down, which teaches their brain what and what not to remember. So it's very similar to that. So moving on to online videos, I'm probably going to rate that as a good, because online videos can sometimes be passive. You know what, let's put it as a great, because very similar to rewatching lectures. If you're struggling on a question, sure, it's a good thing to use. Yeah, it's a very great resource to add to your knowledge. It can really help you to jog the memory. Moving on to studying with music. A lot of people say that you shouldn't do it, but personally I put it as a great, because studying with music is good depending on what you're listening to. So in my opinion, of course, I believe that if you're going to listen to music while studying, it should be music that has no lyrics, so some kind of lo-fi or something like that, instrumentals, because the lyrics can distract you from the work that you're doing. But when you're just listening to beats or something chill, it can really help. So let's go back to editing Tosan. So thank you for watching this week's video. Please go check out our Instagram at ToastVision, also our TikTok. If this video helped you, please leave a like and subscribe. But if you want to see one of our other videos, click right here. But if you never want to miss out on a video again, you should just subscribe. Signing out. All the other guys ain't really built like me. They got janky motives, don't know what they want. They keep blowing smoke, but I keep it blunt.